Hey, thank you so much for listening to Reversing Climate Change. This is Ross Kenyon. I'm the host of the show. The two sponsors are Eco Engineers and Philip Lee LLP. Oh, Eco Engineers. What isn't Eco Engineers? I've had a really great vantage point of carbon dioxide removal. And so often I'll start talking with a company and they will say something like, oh, well, we've been working with Eco Engineers for a while now, either trying to build this methodology or just trying to figure this project out, trying to get the quantification right, trying to figure this MRV out. That has happened to me so many times. And I've been glad to see them have so much success with so many companies in our space. Eco Engineers is essentially a consultancy that helps carbon removal tech and project developers get to market effectively. If you've ever started a company, one of the early decisions that you're going to need to make is which of these things can we bring in-house and which of these things do we need to pay consultants for? And often the conventional knowledge here is that it always makes sense to bring stuff in-house if you can. But I think bringing in very experienced consultants early on can save projects a lot of time and money. For instance, you might end up on the phone with David LaGreca. David's going to be on the podcast soon, and David has done, dozens of methodologies within the voluntary carbon market. And if you could just get on the phone with David for a little bit and you are trying to bring a new methodology or protocol to market, you have some new approach, you're a biochar project and you're trying to figure out, given your technology, region, biomass availability, what is the best way for me to work within the options that I have available to me? That's a person that you could very easily be paired with. David will likely shave off time and money from what would otherwise be a process that is pretty overwhelming. And that's just the start of it too. Eco has been engaged with people I've known or worked with, from everything from project design to the actual MRV plans, doing the LCA itself, registering the project, doing the diligence support, feasibility studies, tech evaluations, market eligibility. I feel like they're halfway to being an EPC without actually being an EPC for some of these things. Sometimes you don't necessarily need one person full-time thinking only about your project. Sometimes it makes sense to get 10 people on a fractional basis who have worked on collectively hundreds or maybe thousands of projects. Whether or not that will be the way for your company to go, you'll have to take the calls to figure it out. And I very much think you should do that. The link is in the show notes if you'd like to get in touch with Eco Engineers. Tell them Ross Kenyon sent you. Philip Lee LLP is a law firm with a lot of experience in carbon markets and carbon removal. If you've been working in this space for really any amount of time, you probably have noticed that you do need competent counsel to do business here. The contracts that get signed are frankly pretty weird. You're going to need help from a lawyer with a red pen. I'm sorry to inform you, your only choice is basically who they should be. And if you are deciding who they should be, you should be considering Philip Lee LLP. They've won Environmental Finance's VCM Law Firm of the Year for the last, since 2023, essentially. It hasn't happened yet for 2026. I imagine they're a contender for it this year as well. They are the largest legal team dedicated to the financing and development of carbon projects globally, and they have offices in the US, Europe, and the UK. One cool new thing I just learned, actually, is that they have been listed as a firm in Chambers Global as a global market leader in the area of climate change. This listing aligns Philip Lee LLP with around 15 to 20 of the leading law firms practicing in this practice area in the entire world. So congrats to Philip Lee LLP. Thank you to Philip Lee LLP for your generous support of the show. You make it possible for me to dedicate so much time to putting out content that I hope is useful to our friends and peers and fellow travelers in the world of carbon removal, climate change, and carbon markets. Thanks so much. Here's the show. Hello, thank you so much for listening to Reversing Climate Change. This is Ross Kenyon. I'm the host of the show. I'm a co-founder of a company called Nori, which was either the first or second carbon removal marketplace and registry that existed. We were founded in 2017, and today I have one of my former co-founders from Nori, Alexsandra Guerra. I call her Ale. Ale is here to talk about our parallel careers, things that we've learned, and basically how I've come around to a lot of her way of understanding the workplace and the world. Obviously, this isn't exhaustive. How could it ever be? I really enjoyed getting to spend some time with Ale and talk about some of what we learned through our coaching work. She has a coaching business called Calming Chaos. If you like what we're talking about here, you'd almost certainly like working with Ale. So I can very easily recommend that you do so. The links to her content and her work is in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening here. Before I get to it, if I could please ask you to give the show a great rating and review on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Helps a great amount. It's also on YouTube. Thumbs up and a subscribe there is great. The podcast and myself are on Substack. If you want to follow and like what's going on over there, that would also be great. But in any case, thanks for listening. And here's the show with Ale.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited. I can't believe we're doing this. Thanks for being here, Ale.
Thank you for having me, Ross. It's like Reversing Climate Change podcast. Wow, it's like a flashback for me.
No, you've been on as a guest. You've guest hosted a bunch, but it's like deep in the catalog at this point.
Yeah, definitely. My voice used to be the intro.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's true. So if you recognize it and you didn't know the context of it, yes, that was Ale.
Yeah.
Where to even begin with this? Maybe I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna take the pressure off of me by asking you, Ale. Where do we start to even dive into a topic as robust as this?
Are we clear on the topic?
No, I'm hoping you can. If you define it for me, I can prepare. I can save myself from poor organization.
Well, so the thing that's been top of mind for me that you and I have been connecting with over many voice notes back and forth, we're like the type of people who send like 10-minute voice notes. And I'm listening there with notes of like, and this point and this point.
Yeah, me too. I
love it though. I love our friendship. So the thing that has been top of mind that we've been chatting about a little bit is like what, our journey as founders and what we're seeing. Because I coach founders, you're mentoring founders as well. And we have our, 7-year experience of founding Nori and operating. And it's like, for me, like, what are all the things people are not talking about because it's ugly or like just not, I wouldn't say kosher, but just not a status or performance signal that people want to talk about. And those things that we don't talk about are exactly what's holding back so much beautiful innovation on the things that we need to be innovating on today. I'm sorry.
No. I think you're absolutely right about that. And oftentimes when I'm either coaching in accelerators or mentoring somewhere else, or whenever I'm working with startup founders, there are many questions that I will ask that will start with, well, what's the story that's being told about this? Is this differentiated? What's the strategic motivation for this? How can we turn this to best effect? But sometimes if you ask a couple questions beyond that, and especially if there's been a wrong turn, there will be some questions like, well, how did you come to this decision? And you'll get some answer that will have more emotional content than what preceded it. And if you even just ask a very basic question, like, how did it feel to make that decision or something like that? Sometimes you can see the eyes water a little bit. You can see like something start to unlock. Yeah. And what's funny about those sessions too, this is like more of a meta comment, but I don't know if you know this, but sometimes I'll ask like a 1-sentence question like that, and they'll report back to me and be like, that was an amazing session. Thank you so much. I'm like, I basically just asked you
an open-ended
question.
Good coaching.
That let you explore the emotional content of why you made this maybe suboptimal decision. I don't know if you have that experience. You're like, I barely did anything.
Absolutely. Because that's what good coaches do. And, so Paul and I both had coaches while we were operating Nori. And it was immensely valuable. And I think I always knew I wanted to be a coach, but you have to kind of have experience in something to coach. So it's all a beautiful unfolding in my life, the career. But he just asked really good questions. And I, as a receiver of that, I'm like, yeah, that's the thing, is to be witnessed, to be helped, to be guided through questions. But what's interesting too is that you said, yeah, how did that decision make you feel, or the consequences, etc. 50% of the time, maybe people respond with what they think. So they don't actually, and I'm like, no, excuse me. The question was, was, how did you feel? And they're like, well, I think it was this that did that. I'm like, feel. How did you feel? What did you feel? And sometimes I have to describe, and I'm laughing, I'm making light of it because it's not that serious and I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but these are the challenges that like I also had to deal with because when my coach, would ask me questions, how did that feel? What are you feeling? I would also give, this is what I think. And I'm a very emotional person, which it's just the literacy of understanding. I'm asking you your feeling. I'm asking what's going on. The felt emotion is very different from what I'm asking you cognitively to analyze. And if we don't have the distinction of those two, then we're limited in how far we can go with our decision-making process.
Why do you think it's so hard to bring that kind of emotional work into our professional lives?
God, I love that question. Patriarchy, hierarchy, the culture that we have. And I want to be very, very clear here because people misunderstand or misuse the word patriarchy. And I want to be clear about what I mean by it. Patriarchy is not men, right? Like, I'm not saying it's men. That's not it. Patriarchy that we have in our system is very hierarchical. It is very status driven. It is almost like a zero-sum game, which is very limiting. And you only are succeeding if someone has less than you and you have more than them, which has all these different repercussions to our mental well-being, our spiritual health, and therefore our ability and capacity to create good things for people beyond just our performance and our status. So to get to your question, I think it's inherent in the system we live. And until we call out the system, it's kind of like the fish. I love the little story about like the fish is like, where I want to be in the ocean. It's like, dude, you are in the ocean. No, this isn't the ocean. It's just water, right? It's like you have to recognize that you're in the ocean. You have to recognize the system you're in. And then once you accept it, right, first come from a place of acceptance, you can say, okay, well, there's all these programmed things about what I expect to be successful or to be whole because of this system, but I'm going to choose consciously something different, which is what people mean when like, I want more consciousness. It's like you want to be consciously deciding, hey, are these assumed things actually what I want to accept as truths for me and make a different decision?
What would it look like if we were to have a different set of norms or did not behave in this way? And I'll ask it in a slightly more complex way where one thing I keep coming back to, it's been especially obvious to me the last couple of years, that the people who run the highest levels of government and business around the world are very poorly adjusted people. I'm like, really? Sam Altman's going to get to determine the future of whether we have AGI or not? Should this person have this amount of responsibility and power? I don't think this person is wise enough to do it just because they were really good at business. Not that also means they're going to be wise enough to know how to do something that's potentially existentially threatening. It scares the hell out of me.
Hell yeah. It's like, I hope I don't misattribute this quote, but Teddy Roosevelt, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Is that him?
Lord Acton.
Shit. So of course you would know.
Yeah. Quote man over here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Super well read. I know no one else as well read as Ross Kenyon. So, yeah, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I actually live not too far from Mar-a-Lago. I'm based in West Palm Beach. So oftentimes I'm going for a walk and I hear Trump's helicopter and it just kind of like pulls me out of like my life. And I'm like, whoa, like over there, because there's a lot of people who move to Palm Beach because they want to be close to power, right? Like that's what it is. People search power for the sake of power because what are we searching for? And I mentioned earlier when we started that I wrote an article about this, about high achievers, especially how it affects young founders. And we're just trying to achieve because of a trauma response. It is a trauma response to want to prove ourselves, to feel whole, feel health, like worthy. And I think that that's what power-seeking power is.
Well, what's even the right way to put it? It's not easy to become a billionaire most of the time. It's very demanding. The stories that come out of basically all of these people's experiences, there's so many like cutthroat moments where you had to choose. You're like, am I kind of the villain here? Well, the other guy is worse, so I'm going to take advantage of them in this deal or whatever. There's not like that many stories where you're like, just like a super, super nice guy who everything worked out for this person. So you do kind of make a trade spiritually to even get to that point often. Mm-hmm. Go ahead. You clearly want to follow up on
I'm just like, I'm like, yes, I'm like, preach. Because think about the person, like who we are as people is pretty much the sum of our choices. And we do have the freedom to for the most part, to choose differently at any point. But think about all the choices, because it's so hard to become a billionaire. All the choices you had to make to do that and to keep that up. And I'm like, to me, there's literally nothing more important than the love and the respect I have for myself. Period. Point blank. If that means I live a very modest living and I don't get to fly everywhere, I was like, fine. Like, there's nothing more important to me. But I think, and this is not to demonize or paint negative picture, like, oh, if you're wealthy, like you're a bad person. That's not my intention here. I'm just thinking about like the ultra, ultra, ultra wealthy. I'm like, yeah, I think for the most part, there's a lot of spiritual misalignment that would happen for me, or I think most people, to be the person who makes all those choices, who gets to that state.
Yeah, you attribute it to trauma response from childhood or some other part of one's life that I think the gap here, maybe what you're alluding to, is that this type of status seeking is trying to repair or fill a hole that exists in one's psyche.
Yeah, and if I may, just to stop making this abstract and make it a little bit more concrete and specific, I'll share my story a little bit. So I'm Ivy League educated. I had a master's in engineering as well, like very well studied, very intelligent. And I went to Columbia. We started Nori together, very impressive. We raised all this money. We wanted to reverse climate change. We're so cool. I'm doing Nori with you guys is one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Like,
for sure.
It's just so wonderful. And, in the time since then, I've had a lot of time to reflect, even while we were operating Nori, about like what was going on for me. And it became very clear that for so long I was running away from things that were like these invisible ghosts that were haunting me. And I was trying to run away from them by doing certain things. And that's what I mean by trauma response. So I was like trying to run away from them instead of like welcoming them, accepting them, healing them, and choosing something different. And I think it's different for every person. For me, it stemmed from childhood. My father left when I was a toddler, and then he married someone in her 20s. And then she was 23, like just months after my mom and him split. So it was like, okay, we're replaceable. And I would try to do every single thing perfect so that my father would show up. For example, my mom used to tell this story about a ballet recital. Everybody was there with flowers, really excited. And I was just torn to pieces crying because my dad wasn't there. And so like to me, and I remember that recital. Wow. And to me, it was always like, what do I have to do? To what lengths must I go to perform for my father to show up and give me the love that I want, and that, was inherent and I was worthy of. And also like to fulfill his promises to me. So then this also affected the types of relationships I would pursue with men until I started to heal that, right? Like, oh, okay, I'll just continue making myself available to men who are inconsistent in what they say, who are not there for me emotionally, just like absent, avoidantly attached. So, all that is to say, like, that also then showed up. My mother also was very temperamental. So then I was walking on eggshells around her all the time. So whenever I would cry, my mom would say, "Stop it. You're ruining everything." And I remember one day being in Kmart in Miami Shores, and I said to her, it's like brilliance struck me. And I said, "Mom, sometimes I just have to be sad. And if you let me be sad and let me feel it, I'll be okay." And she goes, "Fine, you go be sad and find me in the toy section with your brother." So she leaves. So I go, and I'm like outside in the Kmart like garden area, and I go to a corner and I cry and I let all the tears out, and I go in and I find my mom. But I never allowed myself to express emotion. I was trying to be perfect. Like I made myself so much smaller for the sake of performing for other people so that they would give me the love that I so needed. Gabor Mate talks about this so much in his books. Like our first primary driver is to be in connection. It is like, especially as a child, it's like how you survive. So you will give up your authenticity in order to maintain that connection. But being inauthentic and out of alignment with your needs, gaslighting yourself in that way, leads to so much chronic stress in the body. That's why women who people please often have a higher occurrence of autoimmune diseases, on and on and on and on. So bringing it back round, like as I'm learning about these things, experiencing life, having relationships, building startups, figuring out who I am and recognizing like, man, I'm like operating in these really dysfunctional ways. Okay, so at Nori, let's talk about some of the that I did that was so messed up that I didn't understand. I mentioned this in the article that's coming out next week, depending on when you listen to this. That was March. So this is March 6th. So imposter syndrome. I didn't feel confident in myself at all. And so I thought if there was an issue happening at Nori, of course they know it, and I'm not going to say anything, which is like total disservice because you guys didn't see it. And I would like, why would I need to be on the team? I'm like, okay. Another one was playing the hero. I thought I needed to people please and take on more than I could because no one else could do it. So let me volunteer myself to fill this gap that is not met by anybody else on the team, which that meant I took on way more with that I could have capacity for, which made me an unreliable partner and teammate because I couldn't do everything. And then what else happened? I got sensitive to feedback when it came to me because I'm like, how do you not see how self-sacrificing I am and how much I'm doing for this company? And how dare you not appreciate me? Because I didn't feel appreciated because I was being pointed out where I was falling short because I was taking on too much. And then burnout, which then is a disservice to me because I'm no longer I'm a shell of myself and I'm no longer providing something for my team. So there's my TED Talk.
If you're ready.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot, right?
I can tell.
But I work with clients. My clients are founders in tech, and I see the same things happening with them. And I'm like, listen, if we can't talk about it, then you're going to be stuck. And I don't want that. Like, I want young founders. I want smart, innovative, compassionate people to break free of those like invisible chains that's holding them back so that they can actually innovate on things that the world needs, because the world needs a lot of good, purpose-driven innovation.
Well, I like the way that you no, it's all great. I'm really happy you said all of it. I like the way that you presented what you see as your personal dysfunction at Nori that had a sort of, each one of those incidents like led to the next type of dysfunction and this sort of like nested, terrible.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to understand how to have gotten out of it. I think what's interesting about it is that any possible solution to that problem or problems would not have been probably a business decision. Like the emotional component, wisdom, self-knowledge was probably the way to solve that. And we couldn't have just been like, well, what if we hired someone else to do the, you're like, okay, maybe that helps like on one part, but what led to this type of thing is probably what needs to be addressed. Do you agree with this?
What do you mean?
Like I don't think the solution to this problem was not just a business organization problem. If I were wiser at the time, I would have looked at this and been like, something here's broken. This feedback loop system seemingly makes things worse. If I were wiser and more compassionate, I think I probably could have intervened to do it. So it's not only you, but like what I'm saying is that each part of this was either wisdom or emotional and not purely commercial. It's not just like who's in which role. It's like, why are people volunteering for roles that they're inappropriate for and suffering and we're indifferent to it? And then when they fail at things that they obviously will probably not do as well as their zone of genius kind of work, then we get angry about it. Yep. Like, granted, also, I will say that I have my own versions of this, and I think anyone who's sufficiently reflective will have the same for their own. So it's obviously not just you. Like, do you agree that a lot of the difficulties here had a strong emotional component to them?
100%. And I'm like was receiving, processing, and thinking through some things because it's so nuanced. Because then the answer is like, okay, well then you shouldn't be a founder. It's like, well, here's the thing. Like, there's a nuance in all these things made me, and I think you and some others, like very ambitious and doing these, like, you know, I can't speak for your truth or your story, or my co-founders, but again, I'll speak from my truth. Like, I think there's something about what led us to be so ambitious to just like quit our jobs, to go all in, to put all the money we had saved. We didn't pay ourselves for 2 years, right? The founders, right? We paid all of our employees. I mean, like everything I had that I earned in like just a few years of working was gone in. So there's something there about that was useful in a way. And then also, so then how do you, if that's part of the formula that gets so many young people to be super ambitious and risk it all, I think we should explore, okay, there might be other formulas. What might that look like? But if you are that, what do you do while you're in flight, while you're like on this journey? And I think the answer here is to, one, have awareness. Hopefully people are watching this podcast and like, you know, get some awareness, and we talk about things a lot. And two, then like invite invite some kindness and some compassion within each other. Like recognize, hey, look, my co-founder, I'm going to do this thing with them. I'm going to accept, just like when you enter into a romantic relationship, a marriage, you're going to accept it's not going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns all the time. Like we're going to argue, but I'm committed to you. And I think that's something very unique to a co-founder relationship, because you are giving your personal risk and time and energy into it. And then as it starts to go into scale up mode, like things need to shift, right? Like it needs to be operationalized. I think that's normal. But when you're betting in on something together, the relationship of young co-founders is so different than when your startup is scaling. And that's okay. But that means you need to have a lot of psychological safety. I didn't feel psychologically safe. I remember there was one day we were still in the first office in Ballard before we moved to the other one. And there was an issue that, you, me, and Paul were talking about. And I said, yeah, but I don't feel psychologically safe to say something like that. And I don't know how I thought about that. And you looked at me and you go, oh man, that's a problem. And I was like, you're right. It is a problem. But yeah, maybe also then the third thing would be like going to coaches, going to people who have the literacy and the tools to help you navigate that, because these are all new skills. And if you're trying to learn a new skill, you go and you learn from someone who's done it. So, get coached.
The advice I give that's related to this, if you've been coached or mentored or probably just worked with me for any amount of time, my most commonly given piece of business advice is to go to therapy. Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, it's like one of the most oftenly given things I'll say, where I'm like, okay, like unless you kind of have a grip on some of these things, there's going to be some amount of emotional dysfunction that will cause poor decision making here. And it's not an issue of being smart, unfortunately, because otherwise you would have already fixed it. It's not that.
You would have found it in a book or a podcast or like, yeah.
That's why I don't like when people oftentimes say what you said about me too, where here, I'll do my version of this a tiny bit for you too.
Yeah,
like,
please.
Okay, I'm ambitious. And one of the ways that my ambition comes out in a toxic way is I seemingly have read like everything. And people are always like, wow, like that's so cool. Like you're so smart and well read.
I did do that earlier.
Yeah. So handsome and so wise. And so you're like, this is great for me. Like, I'm so happy I read these things. Now people think I'm super smart.
Yeah.
They're also not
feedback that you were looking for. Right.
Yes. People don't see the chronic malinvestment into my own skills where I've read a lot of stuff. I probably could have been doing more math during that time. I'm also doing things like not having a single quiet moment because I'm always reading a book via audiobook. And then so my mindfulness and my ability to be present, and people think that consuming content becomes its own kind of victory or status or leveling up. And it is in a way. The thing is, it's not a lie. There are real benefits from acquiring more knowledge. But at some point, the diminishing returns are pretty great too, where you're like, the point of life is not to gather as much knowledge as possible. I think it's to acquire as much wisdom as possible. And that comes out because you become more kind and loving and not smarter. I think that's kind of where I'm at.
I think so.
You're reacting. Tell me what you think.
So many things. I mean, I'm going to work my way backwards. So the last thing you just said, I completely agree. Like the wisdom and love is, I mean, that's like philosophy, and you're a philosophy like major, right?
Yeah.
So seeking truth is that wisdom. And I think that gives us love. And I think truly that's what people are looking for. Like, in the story that I shared about my journey, I was just looking for the love of my father and my mother, and like, and the calm and the studied, like calm, grounded confidence to like be in the world. That doesn't mean I wasn't intellectually curious. Like, it's not binary. Everything is so nuanced. So yeah, I'm a very intellectually curious person. I care about climate change. I care about psychology. I care about people. I care about philosophy. Like, these things are exciting to me. And then all these, this idea of content and like, okay, we can generate more. It's like, I always felt like nothing I did was ever enough, especially at Nori. It was like, you didn't read this article? You don't know who that is? Like, I remember one of our investors, we were like at a party or something, and they'd name drop some big billionaire or something. And we were at this party where they're there. And I'm like, oh, I don't know who that is. And she laughs. And she's like, oh, that's so cute. And I'm like, dude, like, what? Like, I'm supposed to know everybody and everything. I'm supposed to know every famous climate scientist. I'm supposed to know every major corporation that might want to buy carbon credits. I should know every single person who's ever made tons of money. It's like, can you? So I burnt out, right? Because the expectations, I've also written an article recently about this, that burnout is essentially this river of expectations that drowns us. Because, and the thing is, now with AI, access to information, content generation is getting greater and greater, and we're getting overwhelmed. And so we do have to decide, not just, hey, where's my point of diminishing return so I can make a decision? No, just make a decision. This is how much content I want to create or read. And that's it. And then the rest of it, this is also how much time I want to spend meditating or being with my family or cooking or just like exercising, like all those things. So then how you started that thread too was around the biggest thing that you suggest, or the most common thing that you suggest founders do, is get a therapist. I agree, and a coach. And the reason why, and I'm doing coaching because I find it valuable. So obviously I have an opinion on this. I've had therapists while I was working at Nori. I was working with her for several years. And then I also had a coach, and they were both great. And I had them both at the same time, and they serve different functions. So a therapist will help you uncover, like I uncovered all that stuff about my family and perfectionism because with my therapist. My coach's job was not to sit there and help me identify what was going on. I could bring that distilled information and share it with him. And then he's like, that's good. Now what? Now what? Stop looking backwards. Now what? What are we going to do about it today? So both.
Yeah, I think some therapists can do both, but they are different skill sets, I think. It depends on the kind of therapy you're doing and probably the kind of coach that you find and whatnot. But
true.
Okay, well, one thing that you said earlier that we moved past that caught my attention too is one of my regrets is that I definitely also, what did you say about it? You were like, you kind of took for granted that people knew what they were doing or had like made the right decisions and just sort of
or saw the fire. So one of the earliest things I learned was like, I was quiet about the fires that I would see. And I assumed Alden, Paul, Christoph, you, whoever was in the room saw the fire, and I was quiet about it because I felt like an imposter. And y'all did not see the fires because it was my unique ability to see those fires.
Yeah, I think that was one of my learnings here too. Is I think one piece of advice I give to lots of founders is that you shouldn't just trust all of these duties to the CEO in general, like especially things like you also need to read term sheets. You also need to know what's in commercial agreements. If you're serving on leadership, you can't just delegate that out to the person who's strictly responsible for it because it is so company affecting that you really need to know what a flat round or a down round means for your company and what that means for the cap table, or even things that are just basic business design decisions. Like one of the things that kind of makes us laugh is to look back at the crazy auction system that we had back in the early days where we had a lot of decisions that were made that were dreamed up outside of any kind of customer feedback. And then the people who were left to operationalize it, mostly you, would just be like, cool, no one wants this and it's going terribly and I would very much like to change it. And because it was like, well, this is the plan.
Just do it. And it's your fault that you were not able to do it. And I was like, wait, what happened to like the looping in customer? Like, where's the lean startup principles here? Like, what's happening?
It sounds like really deeply painful. And
deeply painful.
Yeah, like part of my waking up too is that I didn't know that much about carbon markets or this world before coming in and founding it because I was bringing a different kind of skill set and experience. And over time, as I did gain a lot more of that experience and knowledge and had studied up and had lots of conversations, some of the things I started waking up to being like, like how did we make this one decision, or like what happened here? And then that engaged me in, as I grew into the more like strategically focused role, was very much focused on like, do we still need to do it this way? Like, is this still important to us, or can we ditch this thing because it doesn't seem to be as important as maybe it once did, and might actually be harmful or holding us back in some way. But those kind of conversations are really hard to have. And it doesn't even matter how old the business is. Sometimes I was working with a team recently that had made a decision about where to commercialize their technology based upon where they'd lived in the past and where they had family relations. And I was like, is this objectively the
Mhm.
best place to do this? Or is it just kind of convenient? Or you want to be there for other reasons? And I couldn't quite get through to this team in the right kind of way, but I was trying to imply like these are separate things and you don't need to try to combine these because you're not able to persuade me. And I'm someone who's paid to kind of hear you out, and people who are not paid to hear you out are going to give you less credit. And this explanation doesn't make any sense to me. And
what do? Do you tell them? Do you
if people
highlight?
are paying me, I always tell them the truth, or as much of the truth as I feel like I can say
Right.
it in as kind of way as I can. But I also try to make sure that it's done in a way that has the greatest chance of them hearing me. But yeah, if I don't
Yeah.
want to, yeah, if people are taking time and or paying me, like, you deserve good information. I've even done things where one company I worked with once upon a time, like how to anonymize this sufficiently. The way that they were paying staff is so radically truncated their runway that I'm like, look, you probably need to fire me and probably everyone else, except for like a couple people that you want to make a co-founder and make them split equity with you. And otherwise, you're going to burn through all your money so fast that you're not going to be able to continue. And I
Hmm.
lost my job after that. I lost that contract. I don't know how
I
many
think
other
that's
people.
the integrity. That is the integrity to thing to do. That's exactly right.
I think so. I mean, this person's paying me to give them good advice on strategy. And I'm like, there's a reason why people don't do it this way, and the reason is you're going to go out of business.
So a little tangent on that, but like to
Go ahead.
me, you're running a business. You're doing your consulting, your mentorship, coaching. I do coaching, and I have I do discovery calls for 45 minutes, and I literally want to know, are we a good fit? And then sometimes, when it's a good fit, I try to close a sale. I'm like, hey, this is what we're doing. And they're like, well, you're trying to close me? I was like, listen, of course I am, because I think you're a good fit, but not everybody's a good fit. And I literally tell them, but you wouldn't know that because you're not on these calls. And I honestly, the tangent here is like, this is why earlier in the conversation you mentioned like spiritual, there was something about like starvation or I don't know, but like lacking spirituality. We were talking about billionaires.
Uh-huh.
What I have learned and what I would say many times when people would interview me as a co-founder of Nori and we were still operating and I was like guesting on these podcasts, I would say entrepreneurship is a spiritual process. And for me, it's like 100% true. So coming back to this conversation about having the integrity to give the advice that would then put you out of the job is the alignment with your integrity and your values, because you have a greater sense and trust, I imagine, in things going for you so long as you continue to show up. It's not like, oh, just sit and meditate and everything's going to fall in your lap and you're going to have $100 million. It's more like, no, I trust that there's something greater out there and I'm going to act in alignment with those values. If someone is paying me that they can't afford me and they need to make different things, like that's the decision I'm going to make. And that alignment and that trust allows you to move things out of your way, work within integrity. And I think in the end, just live a truly aligned, fulfilling life, and better business will come to you that will match that type of value set.
I've gotten a lot better at this over time. I don't know if it's age, wisdom, how those things are interrelated. I'm not really sure, but I often come back to we've talked about this before, the part of the Sermon on the Mount about the lilies of the field and the birds, and like those things are not that important. God takes care of them. You don't really need to spend a lot of time worrying. And I've said no to deals like this before, or I've lost deals for maybe it just wasn't the right fit. And sometimes you can feel upset about those. But I actually had a client who really wanted to work with me, and I ended up saying no, and it wasn't the right fit. And the way that I ended up saying it, which is both a really gentle and kind way of telling someone no, but I think it's also the truth, is that they wanted to bring me on as an advisor. I was like, look, I don't think we're going to like be the right fit, just like the way that our brains work. I think you'll find someone better. And by not working with me, it might be disappointing, but you are freeing up room on your cap table for someone who is a much better fit that you will enjoy working with, that will be there for the long term. And I am giving you the gift of not taking equity off of your cap table that you will regret. And like, part of me is just like, oh no, like the scarcity, like, oh, my economic future is like vanishing, but also it freed up time for me to do something else that I would want to do. And I don't want to take equity for something that I didn't earn? Like, is it also just like doesn't feel that good either? Yeah. You like this approach, it sounds like.
I love it so much. I'm just like, it's just nice to see. And like, I meet founders like this too. Like and my clients, sometimes they tell me about things that I'm like, man, I'm just so proud of you. Like, you're just like such a good person. And those are the type of people I want to work with, because I really want to work with people who are purpose driven, not just for the sake of like, oh, I want to make tons of money, I'm going to do this thing. Like, I've had some clients like that, and I'm like, wow, this is like, for me, didn't feel really great. It wasn't very fulfilling. And I'm like, what was the extra little cash? Like, come on. So I've learned that lesson, and I think it's really beautiful. And if more people, I'm glad we're talking about it, because if more people were able to trust in this and make those types of decisions in alignment, think about how everything else, because like everybody would shift. We'd all like just fall into the places we need to, instead of like seeking the power, like flocking towards people that we like, because we want the validation that this fund gave us our seed round or our Series A, and we're so cool. And it's just like, oh yeah, but then they also gave you the worst deal ever. And also, how are your board meetings every quarter? And like, do you trust them? Like, it just like, and it's tough because building a business requires capital. It requires investment and resources, but there are things that you can do to test things out and be a little bit more lean and be more values aligned and take your time. Like, let things grow. Not like, we worked in nature. We were doing nature restoration, regenerative agricultural, carbon removal credits. And we had this expectation that we were going to scale this thing like Uber or like Twitter. Like, you don't just buy more data centers and all this. It takes tens of years for carbon to be sequestered. And so, within the very clear context of venture-backed funding and tech, like, yeah, that's a clear example. But also, if we just think about it more on a meta standpoint of like, ooh, I can just like settle in here, feel what it feels like for nature to, I'm in South Florida, so we have mango trees everywhere. I can see a mango tree in my backyard. That mango tree, it took years to bear fruit for the first time. All right, the seed goes in the ground. It takes a couple months for it to like sprout up. Then it has to survive all these elements, become a sapling, and then grow into a tree. And then years later, it's going to bear fruit, and now it's huge, and we have all these beautiful mangoes. And we expect too much. And I think that's part of the system we're in. It's like rushing, forcing, trying to like fill in an inner hole of like lack of fulfillment or lack of worthiness or lack of feeling wanted or desired, whatever, as fast as possible, because we're uncomfortable with it. And we're running away from these ghosts, building these startups. And then it catches up to us. Eventually it will. I promise you. Unfortunately, I know that. I've seen it. I've done it. Like, but if instead we can just address those things, give our own sense of well-being within ourselves, validate ourselves that we are worthy, that we have something wonderful to provide to this world, and then build from that place and let the mango seed take root and grow into a tree and bear fruit over time as nature intended. That's what I want. And that's what I want to help people do.
It'd be nice to have some of that happen more quickly. I feel like I only started
more quickly.
Yeah, you see that. I remember like us working together at Nori, like, okay, you call yourself a walking Hallmark card. And there were certainly times where I'm like, Ale is super woo, and like, this is like more touchy-feely than I'm really frankly comfortable with. And like over time though, as like you and I have reflected and spoken a lot recently, I feel like I've drifted much more closely to how you see businesses operating in a healthy, sustainable kind of way. Mm-hmm. And it's much more engaged in emotionality than before, where I felt like I was pretty closed off from a lot of that, to the extent where like people like you almost don't even make sense to a person like I was. Or like, I think you caught glimpses of that in me, but I was also like pretty good at tamping it down really hard. And then over time I've been like, oh, Ale is actually like a secret genius here. Like, she knew this all along, and we were like, this sort of like me like, oh, biggest eye roll on Ale going kind of woo. And now I'm just like, God damn it, she was right the whole time. Oh no.
So for the listeners, like there were things I did well, as well as things that I did poorly.
I think so. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. And it was funny because I remember like I would see that, like I'd see like, like a glimmer of like, oh, what's Ross feeling? What's going on? And that's where I can tune into the truth. that's where, for me, that's my unique ability is empathy. But if you're closing off the emotions, then I can't tune into your truth. And then I can't uncover what our dysfunction is. And I also didn't feel anybody was doing that for me. So obviously I was very clear about my emotions, but no one else on the team, quite honestly, had the empathy skills to tune into, hey, Ale, what's going on, and get curious and help me through it. And that's why I think empathy is also a really important thing, that you need to have a lot of people on your team, at least 50% of them with good skills in empathy, because dysfunction is going to happen all the time. And then there's something else I wanted to share though.
Good.
So everything that you were saying, we're talking about wanting things to go faster and building the business. And, before we went into the woo-woo part, this theme of allowing us to take our time to build businesses sustainably. Let's go to the title of your podcast, the Reversing Climate Change podcast. Yeah.
The voice is here. Okay. I recognize that voice. Yeah.
It's the Reversing Climate Change podcast. Just wanting to remember that as the theme and the call when we started this podcast 8 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years.
Yeah.
This is why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So I'm an environmental engineer. I've focused, climate has been at the forefront of my mind forever. And I was working on climate solutions. And now I've pivoted to people because I realized people are the ones making the decisions that's causing climate change. And that's where we have all this healing work to do. And then I recognized and allowed myself permission to be like, oh, my zone of genius is empathy and adaptability and coaching. I'd be a great coach. My coach and my therapist both told me so. They freaked out when I said, I'm thinking about doing this. And so if we were to shift the expectation and heal this inner clawing for external validation so that people were just okay, actually I'm good, I'm whole, I'm wanted, I'm connected in community. Now what can I create? The things we're going to create are going to be more regenerative, more sustainable, more kind, more compassionate, more looking at the community, how it impacts the community. It'll be less ego driven, performance driven. And that's how we reverse climate change is we build business and economies from that state.
I really didn't want that to be true. And Nori was the opposite of that. We're like, what if people could make money when they were reversing climate change? And you're like, that is a lever to pull. And it will motivate certain kinds of people who otherwise might not care. But the longer I stare into this, the more I'm like, yeah, why do we behave like we don't want to stay here? Why do we behave like we're just going to consume this whole place and then leave? What's wrong with us? And sure, we can find economic and technocratic ways of trying to deal with it. And that could probably help on some axes. But I feel like what we need is probably deeper than that, unfortunately. It's
totally
the hard work.
Yeah, it's the hard work that no one wants to talk about on LinkedIn. And then I'm talking about it and I write an article and I get 6 likes.
Punished on LinkedIn, by the way. Yeah, I feel if I say anything theological or anything even religious, I'll be 60 impressions. I'm like, oh, cool. Well, I'm glad this person who went to the conference and took a picture there gets 5,000 impressions for it. Thank you. I'm glad they had a fun time at the conference.
So this is what freaking LinkedIn. I love it and also get frustrated with it because it is the perfect ecosystem of what I'm talking about, which is this performance signaling, the status signaling, and the content that always does best that I publish will be I founded Nori and we did this. People love it. They're like, oh my God, Nori. I'm like, guys, who cares? It's just can we talk about something new? I talk about a new client and a problem they're going with and no one, crickets.
Really?
But I don't care. I'm still going to, the thing is too, there's the LinkedIn lurkers. I learned this from a friend.
Okay.
Are you familiar with this?
I can figure out what it is kind of, but tell me.
Yeah, the LinkedIn lurkers are essentially the people who are viewing your content, but don't want to interact with it because they don't want their boss seeing that they like it.
Oh,
right. Yeah. So recently I had someone refer me to a new client, a prospective founder, but none of them engaged with the article I wrote on burnout for tech founders, but it was shared privately in the messages. So this happens a lot. And so I would say for those who are on LinkedIn and you and I, we need to just keep sharing our stuff because there are lurkers and there are lots of people who want to see it. And that's where our audience is because we are working with professionals and builders of business. And then also I kind of I hedge my bets and I go and I'm doing TikToks all the time and my YouTube's growing and it's really great. And I love how people react through there. It's just much more grounded. I even did a couple TikToks on LinkedIn lurkers, and also like I was like, why not? Here's the things I hate about LinkedIn culture, and like people are like, yeah, we love that, we hate it, just but I still appreciate LinkedIn, and there's like, it's such a beautiful place for me to connect with cool people, like really intelligent people talking about the same things I'm talking about across the world. So,
Do you also sometimes have just like a general feeling of something about this is just not kind of right, and you listen to that?
Yeah, but right now, like I have the privilege that God has given me to be the sole owner of my business. I have a small team, and they kind of just do what I ask them to do. But I like super hands off. Like I'm just like, hey, can we get this done? And amazing. Like I love them. But at Nori, like it wasn't as you had to like build a business case every single time. And that's, I think, maybe something that we talked about earlier about the relationship with co-founders is quite different than like a business. And there's a weird gray area because then we bring in other people from leadership who are not co-founders. And I know they struggled with our relationship between co-founders because it is so unique. But yeah, I think these are really tough problems. I would say just be guided by your best attempt to stay values aligned in general, but there's no right answer. And yeah, there's always going to be like a situation where you're like, I just felt ick with that person. I can't tell you, like my gut is like, don't do this. So you can say that and the other person can agree to like ignore it, or ask more questions to understand it with you.
Yeah, for sure. The co-founders thing. There's like so many things that, especially like early Nori design decisions that crack me up still. And when I come across founders now that I'm working with, I'm always just like, do you remember my whole thing about double mumbo jumbo? Do you remember this?
It's not just mumbo jumbo, it's double mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. It's from that screenwriting book, Save the Cat, but it's you can have werewolves or time travelers, but not time traveling werewolves. It's just too much magic stacked on top of itself.
Time traveling.
And Nori was like nothing
We were
except
like that.
Oh yeah, and it was like, oh, there's 7 co-founders, and it's token finance, and it's all on blockchain, and it's only
and we're gonna have 4 contract auctions on carbon removal. I was having, just like it, but you have to share it with. I don't know if you said it on a podcast before, but the parlay bet. I think that's such a good analogy.
Oh yeah, I think I usually characterize Nori as just like the ultimate parlay bet for a carbon removal startup. It's like so many things that you had to be right about, and if it hit, you'd be like, "Cool, this all worked out perfectly." And if any one of them failed, you're like, "That was a terrible decision. We definitely should have dropped that one a long time ago." Yeah.
There's this. I think that's why. I mean, it's again like ambition. Like the farther you go, the harder the fall. Like in general, I personally am now, and I knew it when I was at Nori. I was like, the next business, because I knew I was going to do a next business. I was like, the next business I do is going to go slow and steady, and it's going to be lean, and I'm going to test everything. And so, like, even when I started with coaching, I still have the spreadsheet of like all the things I could help founders with, and then I did a quick, Matt Schmidt was one of our board members, and he told me this piece of advice after a board meeting once. And he used to work at Cargill, and I'll never forget it. So I really appreciate this from Matt. He's like, you know what? Even the best, even the roughest algorithms will lead you to a fairly good, well-informed decision. So I do this now. Like if I have a decision to make, I'll put all the options in a spreadsheet, and then I have all the factors I'm considering, like how well I can solve the pain point, how deeply the pain point is felt by the customer, and like how aware of them. And then time to execution. I wrote all these things, I scored them all, and then I ranked it. And I was like, oh, burnout. That's what I'm going to do. Even though everybody told me, don't do burnout. Like you can't find people who are burnt out. And I was like, founders are burnt out. And also I was a founder. So there's like some credibility there. And I remember because I was in a program of people and coaches, like how to build your offering. Because I was like, I've never done a coaching business. So I paid coaching business to help me. And yeah, it was fine. Like I thought it wasn't going to work either because everybody told me it wasn't going to work, but it works because people are burnt out and they're like, I need help and I don't know what to do. And there's all these things going on. So
yeah, there's something about that when you know that you're right or have like a really strong sense that, okay, the data is not showing this, but I sense that there's something here and I will test it in this kind of way. I think it's a fine thing to do. Maybe it's just Nori is funny. Obviously, there's always proximate causes and ultimate causes of failure. We're like,
But then iterate, like test one thing, like test this one language. And then if the language doesn't fit, like change the language to the next best option you have on the list. And then like do these tests and iterate and then build your business from there instead of like, oh, we're going to have like a 10-person team and we've not generated $1 revenue. It's like, well, that's a lot.
Yeah. And also it's also like one of the ultimate boil of the ocean kind of businesses too, where it's like, not only do you have to make a notoriously difficult two-sided marketplace work, we're also a registry. And also you're not supposed to be both a marketplace and a registry at the same time.
Also, we disagree with everybody about what additionality looks like.
Yeah. You're just like, oh man, like so many stacked contrarian takes on this where it was tough. Yeah.
But also, isn't that what people loved about us in the climate space? They were like, they're so different and wacky.
Different. No one has ever said, I liked how different and wacky you guys were.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know.
I think the most common thing I hear is that people were happy that, like when they were getting interested in carbon removal, there was so much content already for them to engage with, especially with the podcast. They're like, I hear from a lot of people, like that was one of the first things that got them in and did that. And it was nice to see that happening. Yeah, it was great. But also, I don't know. I kind of feel like it probably would have happened in a very similar way had we not existed either, because Puro was right behind us too. And like carbon removal was going to happen.
No, but Nori was so unique. We were really trying. We had a team of, again, like 6 co-founders at first. And we all had such different things that we were giving to the business.
7?
Alden.
I think it was 7.
It was 7, yeah. And then it was 6 really quickly. And then we were 6 for a while. Then it was 5 and 4. Like we've got our own resources, our own talents. Let's build something holistic. We wanted to be category king in carbon removal. And I think that was really beautiful because I didn't understand. I was like an engineer. So I'm like, why are we spending all this time on a podcast? Grumble, grumble, grumble. And you were freaking right. And like immediately you and Paul started the podcast and it was consistently over time, a driver of sales, a driver of reputation, of credibility. And I think it just happened exactly the way it needed to. But Puro and others didn't have that. Pachama, they were doing great as well. They didn't have that. I think Nori, if we can disintegrate and like, I truly don't believe that Nori failed. I just don't. I think the business model failed, but in our mission to push the envelope further, like move things further in terms of reversing climate change, we all did that. We did that. We were one of the first. We were pioneers. My best performing LinkedIn post with like 500 likes and all these things is the one when I announced that Nori closed. In the comments to this post, you guys were the pioneers. Nori pioneered. Sometimes like the other day I was looking at my analytics and I was like, I just love reading this because it makes me feel truly humbled and like, you don't have to have your business be the thing that exited for you to have successfully done something, learned something, and grown. Success is so much more than that.
Yeah, I think so too. It's kind of nice to let go too. I feel like the longer it went too, you end up feeling pretty boxed in at some point, and it was nice to just feel like, it's like, it might be nice to do something else. It was obviously painful. I've always likened it to what I imagine a divorce is like, where it's like a mixture of, you're angry at maybe the other person or people. If you're married to multiple people and you divorce all of them at the same time, I guess that's kind of what it's like. Maybe you're angry, you're sad, you're also relieved. It's like nice to let go.
It's like, okay, something new is coming in.
Yeah,
this has been so fun.
It has been so fun. So many topics.
I don't even feel my pain anymore. I'm just like here.
Wow, healing. Yeah, that's nice.
Healing.
Okay. What kinds of founders that are maybe listening right now would be a good fit to work with you?
It's a great question. Thank you for asking. Those who are purpose-driven and find themselves dealing with many challenges that come with the journey, like lacking clarity on what to do next, lacking accountability on the structures and systems. So Ross, you always used to make fun of me, like, Alan is so systems driven. She's so process lady, blah, blah, blah. And but you also call me like very emotional woo woo. And I wear all the time this necklace. It's a yin yang symbol, it's a little twisted. But I really believe in the complementary things that is structure and flow. So I'm the type of coach that will help you identify what's going on emotionally that's keeping you stuck in conflict with your co-founders, stuck in indecision, procrastination, lack of motivation, all these things that happen with burnout. But also, I'm the type of coach who will sit down with you and we will create the systems that you need to move yourself out of that. So it's feeling and moving. It's aligned action with your purpose. And I really love working with people, again, who are very purpose driven, who are driven by something greater than themselves to provide impact for people beyond just themselves.
I'm so happy we did this, Allie. Why did it take so long? I don't even know. Well, it happened exactly when it was supposed to happen. How about that?
It happened exactly when it was supposed to happen. Thank you for having me, Ross. It was a pleasure.
For me too.